Podcasting, the latest frontier. These are the episodes of a Catch as Catch Can podcast. Its continuing mission: to explore strange, nerdy topics, to chat about sports, movies, sci-fi, and so much more. To boldly pod where this nerd has gone before. Captain's log, pod date 0519.19. And why did I sound like a vampire there? Bleh! Anyways, on this episode of Too Boldly Pod, we're going to sort of run the gamut of oddness, if you will. We're going to pay tribute to one of the stalwarts of the UFO field who passed away this week, one Stanton Friedman. We're also going to take a quick little look at the Star Trek, the original series episode, Wink of an Eye. We look at whether the NFL should adopt a draft lottery or stay as is. We're going to answer our Too Boldly Pod question about your favorite Saturday morning television show. And we have a very interesting little news article to discuss. So, Scotty, set phasers on stun, engage. It's fairly common knowledge that I'm kind of sort of a Trekkie. I mean, take a look at the name of this podcast if you need any more proof. But I watch the original series episodes quite often, and I've seen them all dozens and maybe even hundreds of times. But every once in a while, even though I've seen them all and know them all fairly well, I watch one and I kind of come across thinking how unique and how well done and how great an individual episode is. And maybe someday on this podcast, I'll try to whittle down a list of my 10 favorite episodes or something, but that's later on down the road. Last night, I was sitting here, next, to be honest with you, it was in the middle of the night I woke up and I couldn't go back to sleep, so I did what I normally do. It's one of two things generally. I either turn on Futurama or Star Trek. And last night I turned on Star Trek on Hulu and just sort of picked up where I left off. It's sort of on a rotating cycle. You're all shocked, I'm sure. And I watched the episode Wink of an Eye, Season 3, Episode 10. Yeah, I'm a Trekkie. But it really struck me how awesome and how excellent that episode is.
Please, accept what has happened. There is nothing you can do to change it.
I agree to go with you. Will you set this ship to rights? Take out that device in the life support system?
Don't be so silly. You'll feel better about it all in a little while. It always happens this way. They are very upset at first, and it wears off. And they learn to like it. You will too. He's on his way to you. Be gentle with him.
Captain Kirk! He's gone.
Lieutenant, did you see what happened?
Well, he was sitting there. He'd just drunk his coffee and he set the cup down. You see, it's still there. And then he vanished.
Mr. Sulu, do you verify?
That's just the way it happened. He was there, and all of a sudden he wasn't there.
The dying Scalosians invisible to humans, need the Enterprise crew to help repopulate their decimated planet. That's the TV guide teaser to this episode. And I won't, spoiler-free 50 years later, we won't get into too much spoiling of it, I promise. Yeah, right. But we'll get the nerdy part out of the way for those Trekkies that may be listening. We said earlier, Season 3, written by Arthur Heinemann, based on a story by Gene L. Kuhn under the pen name Lee Cronin. And it just so happens to be the first episode aired as my life as a human started to speed up, i.e., after I was born. It aired on November 28th, 1968. Now, we'll just say this right out front. I think it's a fantastic piece of science fiction storytelling, science fiction television, and a very entertaining episode. The idea of a time-accelerated alien species attempting to abduct the crew of the Enterprise for breeding stock it's just that. It's science fiction, and it was entertaining. Were there plot holes in it? Were there scientific inaccuracies? Well, of course there were. It's science fiction, and you can find that in just about any kind of entertaining science fiction. You get too much scientific accuracy, and you end up with, say, like a 3-hour 2001. Even though I love that movie, still, it didn't keep you on the edge of your seat with nonstop action. And the reason I even bring the whole thing up is reading online a little bit after I watched the episode. There was a lot of negative feedback about the particular episode, and just one that sort of stood out to me was Melissa Gerke, if I'm saying that name correctly, from the University of Maryland, found more problems with the science. Unfortunately, the ramifications of the accelerated living just do not stand up to scrutiny. If a Scalosian stays in one place a while, even just to have a protracted conversation, he should become visible, albeit briefly, to a normal person. And that's sort of the gist of what the commentary is about this episode. But I'm going to go back just a couple minutes ago to what I said. It's a wonderful piece of science fiction storytelling, a wonderful piece of science fiction television. Keyword in all of that, fiction. And part of the reason that we all got so endeared and loved Star Trek so much is the possibility, the fiction, the ability to lose ourselves in ideas that are unreal and unobtainable. Maybe 300 years in the future, we may learn some of this is actually true, but probably not. Hence the reason it's fiction and entertaining. Far too often in today's world, we're unable to suspend belief and just envelop ourselves into an entertaining piece of storytelling. Everything doesn't have to be explainable or scientifically or factually correct. Sometimes it's just fun. And to me, the episode Wink of an Eye was a fun science fiction episode of Star Trek. Do you have any thoughts about the episode Wink of an Eye? Let me know on Facebook or Twitter at TooBoldlyPod. No matter what your field of interest or study or fascination is, each one of those fields has giants, has a Mount Rushmore, has someone or something that initially drew you in to whatever your field of interest is in. And as most of you know, I have a keen fascination and interest in UFOs and ufology, and the ufology field lost a giant this past week when Stanton Friedman passed away. Now, I'm not going to sit here and give you a lecture, a term paper on who Stanton Friedman is. I figured it would be more entertaining if I actually sat here and talked a little bit about what he meant to me and my interest and fascination into UFOs and ufology. But to catch everybody sort of up to speed, if you're not aware who he is, he was a physicist educated at the University of Chicago and is commonly believed to be one of the founding fathers of modern day UFO research, or ufology, if you will.
We got multiple witness radar visual cases, for example. When you get an RB-47 reconnaissance bomber, 6 highly trained crewmen out over the Gulf of Mexico, then over Louisiana, then into Oklahoma, Texas, lasted for over an hour. This darn thing circled around the RB-47 at 450 miles an hour, which is a pretty neat trick. It was back in the 50s, mind you. It was observed on their radar. They radio the ground, what's going on up here, to make sure it wasn't something we had sent up. We don't know, but we're watching you. And Dr. James E. McDonald, professor of physics at the University of Arizona, the world's outstanding ufologist when he was alive, he talked to all 6 of those witnesses. This lasted over an hour. Now, what do you do with something like that? You say these guys are nuts? Come on. You can't. We're depending on them. Are they highly talented? Yes, highly trained because of all the instrumentation on board. That's something that wasn't ours. If we had anything that could look like that and fly like that, we've used it in a few wars that we've had since that time. So it's kind of a process of elimination. I'm not saying we don't know what it is, so it must be alien. That's not what I'm saying. But the characteristics, the appearance, and the extraordinary flying behavior. We'd give anything to have a vehicle that could duplicate that. So it's a very solid case.
My first introduction to Stanton Friedman was the 1979 documentary UFOs Are Real, which he co-scripted with Edward Hunt. And in that documentary, he was featured here and there on it, but it introduced me to a lot of the players, if you will, into the ufology field, like Bruce Maccabee and Brandon Chamblee and Betty Hill and Majorie Fish. And it was the first time that I was introduced to Jesse Marcel and the whole Roswell incident. And from that point on, when I was this young 10-year-old kid, I was just fascinated with the concept or the idea of UFOs. And I've sat here all week thinking about what I really wanted to come on here and say about what Stanton Friedman meant to me. And the best thing I could come up with, and I think it's sort of fitting, is be a believer, but within that belief, don't automatically believe. Go the extra mile, do the research, do the investigation, and at the end of the investigation, if what you believe turns out to be unexplainable, undeniable, then continue to believe. But if you can explain it, then do so. If 99% get debunked or proven or explained, that still leaves 1%. And 1% of the unexplained means something is out there. You will be missed, Stanton Friedman. You were, and always will be, a giant. Now, I like to incorporate all of my friends on social media in this podcast by way of asking a question. that they can all take part in answering. And this week is no different. We all grew up. I suppose that's stating the obvious, but we did. And without growing up, we wouldn't have had the pleasure of sitting down in front of the TV on Saturday morning and watching our favorite cartoon or Saturday morning television program. So, this week's To Boldly Pod question: what was your favorite Saturday morning cartoon or TV show? And I didn't get a ton of responses, probably because I asked the question too late in the process. But we did get some, so thank you to those who answered. Now, Dave answered the Bugs Bunny Roadrunner show or hour. I think it changed names a couple of times. Ended up being Bugs Bunny and Tweety Show, maybe. Long story. Saturday morning Looney Tunes. Randy replied Godzilla and Godzuki. Rob answered Battle of the Planets. That's a good one, Rob. Doug answered Fury. Kirk answered Looney Tunes. Kelly answered Pee-wee's Playhouse, Super Dave, and Elf Tales. Kate answered Scooby-Doo and the Croft Super Show. And Marlene answered The Flintstones. Now, I thought a lot about this because I could have had many possibilities. And I think it breaks down into segments for me. Much like Kate, when I was a really little kid, it was the Croft Super Show, the Sid and Marty Croft shows, and Land of the Lost. And then as I got older, 8, 9, 10, it was cartoons like the Smurfs and the Super Friends and shows like that. So maybe we will revisit this later on down the line and give people more of a chance to answer, because I think it's a fun question and something we can all fondly look back on. So if you have an answer to it, let me know on Facebook or Twitter at Too Boldly Pod. There has sort of been this ongoing debate on sports talk radio this week and on sports websites like ESPN and CBS Sports and whatnot about whether the NFL should adopt the NHL and NBA's draft policy of having a draft lottery for said amount of teams at the bottom or top, if you will, of the draft order. I've been listening to this all week, and first of all, I'm curious what everybody else thinks about it, whether it's a good idea or not. I've thought long, and I've listened all week to sports talk shows and read a bunch of stuff about it, and I don't know if I necessarily buy or believe or think that the NFL should adopt a lottery draft like the NHL and NBA have. Now, before we get into it too much, I'm not one of those people that necessarily believe in the conspiracy of setting up the lotteries to favor a certain team or city for getting the top or one of the top overall picks. I know it's been not necessarily proven, but discussed in the past, even going back to the 80s with the New York Knicks and Patrick Ewing and the frozen envelope, if you will. And it may or may not have happened. I don't think, if it did happen, I don't think it happens each and every season. And I think this year's NBA lottery is proof of that, with New Orleans Pelicans winning the lottery, getting the first overall pick, and only having like a 6% chance to get it and whatnot. So would it be a good idea? Yeah, I guess it possibly would, but you should probably get something good or get some kind of payoff for being so bad, I guess, is the best way to put it. So if you do suck one year, why should you be penalized by entering a lottery chance at improving your team when essentially you went out and earned the right to improve your team by being so bad the previous year. Does that make any sense? I don't know. This whole concept of a lottery is, to me, and I could totally be wrong on this, is more of a television draw, more of a ratings grab, more of a give you something to watch to keep you interested than actually being a way to improve a team. Now, I freely admit I didn't go out and do any research or look at the history or how a draft lottery was actually first conceived of or created or used and why it was. I'm simply going on listening to everybody on Sports Talk and looking at these situations. Putting the conspiracy theorists aside, I just don't think, like I said, if you've gone out on the field and earned the first pick by being so bad, then what's so wrong with allowing you to cash in, if you will, on that first pick and possibly improving who you are? If you have any thoughts, or if you think maybe the NFL should instill a draft lottery, let me know on Facebook or Twitter on Too Boldly Pod. For this week's news story, we're just going to go ahead and play it for you. It's from a Florida local channel, and it's pretty self-explanatory, I guess.
Trial of a South Florida man accused of killing his girlfriend continued today, and so far no ruling on if he'll be able to show his penis to the jury like he requested.
Wait, what?
For more on the story, let's get to Local 10's Carlos Suarez. He's been following this from Fort Lauderdale. Carlos.
The Associate Medical Examiner of Broward County took to the stand about an hour ago and said that in all his years of work, he has never had a single case where someone choked to death as a result of performing oral sex. Now, his testimony goes to the heart of the defense's case that Richard Patterson did not kill his girlfriend back in 2015. Prosecutors allege that the 65-year-old choked her to death, but he claims that she choked on his penis.
Okay.
The ME told jurors a penis would have to be large, far enough down a person's throat to block that person from breathing through their nose and mouth. He also said that it would take 2 to 3 minutes for a person to die as a result of a lack of oxygen, so that it would have been clear that a person, this woman in particular, would have been in distress. Now, the defense has asked a judge whether Patterson can show jurors his penis as part of their case.
Wait. Show them his what?
She has not ruled on whether that will be allowed to take place. The medical examiner is still on the stand, and the defense says that their client did not call 911 the night that he claims all of this happened because he was embarrassed about the whole thing. We are live outside the Broward County Courthouse in downtown Fort Lauderdale. I'm Carlos Suarez, Local 10.
So the hell is wrong with mankind? And that's going to wrap up this episode of Too Boldly Pod. I hope you enjoyed my tribute to Stanton Friedman. He will surely be missed by many. I hope you enjoyed my quick little look at the Star Trek episode A Wink of an Eye. And I hope you enjoyed our chat whether the NFL should adopt a draft lottery. I hope you enjoyed all of our answers to this week's Too Boldly Pod question, and I hope you enjoyed our little news story. What the hell is wrong with mankind? As usual, I don't have a closer to this show, so I will just say this. The truth is out there, Mulder. You just have to know where to look. Talk to all of you next time.
WLLP, Spock Rock Radio.